What's going on, guys? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and let's jump straight into the topic. All right, Gastly gone wild. Okay, this is old news. The temporal forces Gastly got pumped to the moon, and there are some other cards thrown in the works, the Iron Crown, the Umbreon V recently, and I did a video on that. But what's so amazing to me about the Gastly is that I understand that Gengar has an incredible fan base. Gastly, I know there's a Gengar in the Gastly card, right? There's Gengar and Hunter and Gastly. They're all, worked in the mix of the card. It's a beautiful card. It's a cool card. I would say the card's probably worth like $15, $20 off the rip, especially if Temporal Forces is short printed. But here's the thing. That card's been pumped to the moon, right? And it shouldn't matter. You shouldn't be buying that card for the prices that it's selling for. Just because a card catches some sales at that price, even if it consistently sells at a higher price and it's like, oh, it's inevitable, the card is selling at a higher price now. Opossum just did a video on this. He was talking about, and I'm going to reference him more and more because he is right on the scene when it comes to like Reddit posts and news on this kind of stuff and just shiesty behavior. And there's you called it like the final pump boss, and that's so fitting. That's perfect. Because someone is basically, ranting on Reddit that they've, kind of beat the system and that everybody's an idiot, right? Guys, don't buy these cards when they're hitting these prices. Plain and simple. Sellers have one of two options, okay? They're either going to get these cards sold at high prices and you're going to be the reason they do it because you're going to FOMO into it, or they're going to eventually just have to sit on all that product or sell at a slight loss, okay? This is super relevant actually with the stuff I've been seeing with high-end Grail cards, and I'm gonna kind of end the video with that, but stay on point with this Gastly card. The hype around Temporal Forces in general, I don't relate with it, but that's a personal preference, right? If the people have spoken that they like these cards, that they like the big hits, the big chase cards in this set, then it is what it is. But still, typically, every couple months that follows a set release, these prices, they go down, okay? If you're new to this hobby, if you're jumping into the hobby and you're FOMOing to everything, don't do that. Prices pretty much always stabilize. We have cycles, and I am one for always saying, especially with vintage stuff, specifically vintage stuff, that there's a little bit of urgency here to acquire some of these cards. And even with some of the modern booster boxes that are now not on Pokemon Center, which I don't talk about, I don't try to push people to buy stuff now, buy it now, you need to buy this set now. That's really inciting a lot of FOMO, and we don't want to do that. We want to see things naturally rise. We want to see organic growth in the hobby. That is fair game. That is good to see. Love to see it. I love to see prices rise. I'm going to even reference Evolving Skies here, that I think the price of Evolving Skies is ridiculous. And I'm happy to see it, but it's getting kind of crazy. And we talked about this in the recent video, the inflation of everything and the manipulation of the market in different ways. I think when it comes to this stuff, though, super modern. This is ultra modern, guys. When you get an ultra modern set, there is literally nothing. There's nothing pushing you to buy these cards right now. Okay, you might want it. It might be relevant. Relevant is a key word here, okay? People want to be relevant. They want to buy the set that's hot. They want to buy the thing that's new. I totally understand that. I can relate to it. I have fallen prey to it many, many times in this hobby. I have so much regret when it comes to buying modern product and certain things that I bought that I wish I would have waited on. And that may even apply to my vintage collecting experiences down the road. I may see prices start to fluctuate, go down a little bit, stabilize, and say, you know what? I think it's all about patience. But right now, I'm saying this specifically to modern, that there's no urgency here. This stuff is going to be around, okay? We are in the Scarlet Violet era right now, so why are you so pressed to buy Temporal Forces cards? It's okay. If you already bought these cards, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it, but fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, okay? It's like, a lot of people come into the hobby, new collectors, don't know what they're doing, and that's fair that they say, wow, this price is going crazy. I have to get the Umbreon V now. It's $200. I have to get it. It's going to be $300. It's going to be $400. You know, I have to get the Iron Crown. It's $200. It could be $300 soon. I have to get it. It's crazy, even though I personally don't see anything appealing about that card. I'm sure the texture, I'm sure that the artwork is beautiful. That card just does not appeal to me specifically. The stuff that appeals the most to me is OG Pokemon or OG cards in general, WotC era cards, 1999 to 2007. That was the peak of Pokemon for me personally. But it's a different time. It's a different generation. People will forget the past at some point. People will forget all of these sets behind me. They will become irrelevant at some point. And I accept that. I'm okay with that. I still want the stuff that I want. You got to be true to yourself as a collector. If you truly want the stuff in Temporal or any of these alt arts that are starting to be on the rise or on the move, or cards like Gastly, if you truly want it, you don't care, go for it. Go for it. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to get the most value, bang for your buck for all these cards, you've got to exercise some patience. I'm not a pro at doing that. A lot of times I jump into stuff. 151, I couldn't help but try and complete the set. I still haven't completed the set. I need to buy more 151 eventually for our live streams, which to that point, I realized that I missed the first live stream I've ever missed accidentally last night. No one even like said anything in the comments or reached out, probably said something on Discord or asked if we're gonna do a stream. And I haven't checked the Discord yet, but I worked a late night. I am working more than I've ever worked at the bar, and I feel like it's helping the bar grow more, which is equating to sales, which is equating to more money to spend in the hobby and have fun with. I just don't know if it's feasible, you know, from here for me to do every single week live streams. I spend a lot of time making videos as it is, so we may end up going to a bi-weekly live stream just so that it's more of a special thing, but also so it gives me time to recuperate and you know, regain my energy. Anyways, otherwise I would have gotten home after 11 o'clock closing the bar, and I would have started a stream at 11 o'clock, and I don't even think for you guys that would be ideal. But anyways, don't FOMO into this stuff. Give it some time. A great rule of thumb that some of my good friends use is to wait for a set to be out for at least 6 months until you start buying the singles. Let the single prices fall. What I will say, there is one key thing for buying these cards when they come out. What I will say is when a set does first release, if it's not crazy hyped up and manipulated, it can be good to go ahead and buy these cards when they come out. And here's why. This is not because like some cards will moon in value and it can be a good investment. Sometimes your FOMO pays off. That's not where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with this is when you're buying some of these cards when the set first releases, typically they're packed fresh. Typically they haven't been played with by all the people trying to put these cards into the new format, into the new meta. And that being said, they're not played, they're not dinged up, they don't have surface scratches or dinged corners. They'll probably have some of those issues right out of the factory because English quality control, let's just be real here, the US print quality control sucks, okay? It sucks. And we know this, we've known it for a while now. We've always compared it to Japanese and how Japanese is just worlds better in terms of the print quality, but that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is the only reason that I see that it would make sense to buy this stuff right on release is because this stuff is being packed open, fresh, and it can go straight to grading and then being sold. And additionally, with what we talked about with the video, because I'm ahead of schedule on all my videos, what we talked about with the eBay vault and people being able to go from grading straight to selling, I think we are going to see a lot more clean copies of cards being sold on the market now with that whole integrated system with PSA taking over for the vault and being able to immediately auto list your cards. So I think a lot of people are going to be taking advantage of that, and that may actually affect people selling raw cards. If they know that they can get it graded and immediately listed for sale, that may seriously change the whole dynamic of how people are selling their cards. We may see a huge drop in selling raw cards. Now, counter argument for that, vendors don't want graded cards. They really primarily want raw cards. Collecting raw cards takes up way less space. Binder filling cards mainly is done with raw cards. So I think there's always going to be a huge market for raw cards. But again, only reason I could see FOMOing into buying certain cards out of a set is if you really love that card, you really want it for your collection, and you want a really clean example of it, or you want to grade it immediately. Picking a card up for a slight premium can actually still pay off if it's graded quickly enough, right? It's the race to the bottom, right? A lot of times, a ton of cards get graded, but the first graded copies usually do the best, and then it just tanks from there, and then it kind of bottoms out, sizzles, and then starts to rise a little bit back up. But yeah, the Gastly is so freaking manipulated. Like, guys, we can stand together as a community. We don't have to buy into this stuff. Like, they only win if we let them win, right? The person, the Dr. Evil, buying all of the, copies of Gastly, he only wins if everyone's buying them. So, you've got to really understand here that buyers really have all the power in this market. And now with the vault changing, with that whole dynamic changing, buyers have even more power in the market. A seller that I talked about recently, this guy's just been buying tons of Grail cards, flipping them immediately. He's done a killer job. I am not, again, I like to keep people semi-anonymous because I don't want to blast people or, talk down on people. But he is pretty much liquidating all of the cards that he was about to flip through the vault. Why? Because buyers have all the power now. Now that the vault is going to eBay, going to PSA, now that there's going to be fees again, now that the vault is closing up shop, the clock is ticking for you to get these cards and vault them and withdraw them fee-free. And the clock is also ticking for sellers to get rid of these cards, guys. You are not pressed to buy any cards off anybody right now. Right now, sellers are the ones that are pressed to let go of this stuff if they're using the vault system. If they're not using the vault system, then nothing has changed for them. There's a lot of sellers that don't use the vault because they like the easy access to having their cards on hand. There's a lot of people that believe that if you don't have it in hand, you don't have it. So that may continue even with the PSA doing the vault. There may be a stigma of just having your cards somewhere else and not in hand might not be the best thing for you. There's probably going to be a big stigma of that. If you don't have it in hand, you don't really have it. But the other thing is that if people have their cards in hand, they'll basically be able to do private deals, sell on other marketplaces, Facebook, Instagram, Pallet Town, whatever. There's these consigners and sellers on Instagram that are really well known. Pallet Town is one of the big ones. There's Verbank on Facebook. That's a big group. There's people always selling stuff there. In fact, I probably should start looking there. That's where people are going to have to go back to find good deals. I'm probably forgetting one last thing before I end this up with you guys. I think patience is really, really key with a lot of modern alt arts. I don't think that there's a lot of, I don't think there's, the clock is ticking on a lot of these cards because, essentially there's thousands of copies of them. They're not going anywhere. But, on the other side of that, we're now dealing with people coming in and trying to manipulate the hobby. And this has always been around. People are always going to try and manipulate the hobby. The good thing is, there are so many Pokemon cards out there. Even if you corner one tiny piece of the market is so vast, it's like damn near impossible to actually manipulate it fully. It is a shallow market. We've talked about that in the past as well. The Pokemon market is really shallow. Like, for instance, I mentioned this in a comment, right? With the Gastlys, with the whole argument of PSA 10 Gastlys, and like those will still be really high priced because the raws were so cheap. So if they get a 10 and the quality control is really bad, then 10s will still be priced high. That's a whole thing with the quality control. I don't understand how much temporal was printed. I don't understand the quality control behind Gastly, so I'm not going to speak on that. But let's look at the Moonbreon, okay? 10,000 Moonbreon. If somebody comes into this hobby with a lot of money and they pinpoint that that is one of the most popular modern cards of all time. And they bought 9,000 Gastly and 9,000 Moonbryon and PSA 10, and there's 10,000 or 11,000 total, right? Somebody could very easily corner the entire market. Now the price has gone back up a good bit. I think the Moonbryon and a PSA 10 is now like $1,100, which it's great. It's awesome. So let's do, 1,000 times 1,100. You get 10 would be 10,000, 100 would be 100,000, and 1,000 of that card would be $1 million. Now I know you're thinking, Orion, no one is going to spend millions of dollars on Moonbryon. Fair, very fair. But if somebody really wanted to, if somebody with a lot of money that did their research and realizes that everyone is talking about that card, that has been the center of attention for years now, and people are still opening Evolving Skies trying to go for that card, or even, let's talk about the V, and I think that's what's happening with the V2. I don't necessarily think that it was PokeRev's doing. I think that card had been getting manipulated for a while, even from $80, right? I think that card probably was manipulated a little bit. It's a beautiful card, but again, the Vs are just worth less, okay? And there are Vs out there that are $10, $15 Vs, just because it's Umbreon, oh, it's $80, and that was the low, but, now it's a $200 card. The same way, what I'm trying to say is that the Moonbryon being manipulated would be a lot of money. We're talking millions of dollars. We're talking like, basically to corner the Moonbryon market, what's the Z&G Emporium talked about how there's basically millions of dollars wrapped up in the Moonbryon. Like that's the most money wrapped up in like a modern alt art card. And basically if you wanted to corner that market and control it, you'd basically put in like $9-10 million and you would basically like control the Moonbryon market, and turn that into maybe 15 million, 20 million. I mean, we're talking big numbers here because that's the reality of the future, is that people with a lot of money could come into this hobby and manipulate it if they pinpoint certain cards. And I think that's what's beginning to happen on a much smaller scale, but I think that's what's beginning to happen with that Umbreon V. What's going on there is that that card can be had at such a great value in comparison to the Umbreon VMAX alt art. So at a fifth of the cost, basically for $1 million, or maybe, close to $1 million, you could probably corner the entire Gem Mint Umbreon V market. And that card is extremely popular. A lot of people, we've talked about this, find it more popular. We're gonna see some weird stuff happen here. I know I'm like ranting, it might not make sense, but the point, the narrative stays the same, that there's manipulation in this hobby. It is rampant, it is blatant. We see it right there. It's not fooling anybody. It shouldn't fool you. You shouldn't jump into buying these cards. What I will say is, in the future, and this is actually a huge key takeaway here. In the future, it might be worth holding on to illustration artworks and alternate arts that aren't necessarily really valuable right off the bat, because even though we're not wanting to say that like, hey, this is great, manipulation is going to happen and you can get way more for your cards. But like people that just liked Gastly, if they would have just bought a couple copies of that card because they just genuinely liked it, held on to it, they could sell into this manipulation and say, hey, you know what? I'm putting it up because this price is ridiculous and I'm willing to sell at this price because it makes no sense. So, and that's kind of what I did with 151. I ended up, not to say that I thought it was going to be grossly manipulated, but for me, I felt like that set was so special that I couldn't fathom selling any of my SIRs from that set. Like everything that I pulled from that set, I loved it. So, and I thought, you know what? This card could go up a lot more in value. I'm going to hold on to all these copies instead of just selling all my duplicates and getting just like a little bit of cash back. I'm going to hold on to these because at the end of the day, if you hold on to valuable cards that you've pulled, it could at some point get you to break even or even pay off all of the stuff you open to get some of those cards in the first place, as well as just, we never know what's going to happen with manipulation in this market. So collect what you like, as always, and maybe hold on to your duplicate copies of stuff because you never know what can happen. And that's like super vague. I feel like for certain cards, it's like it's a dead giveaway that it's gonna do well. People love Gastly, they love Gengar. I'm a huge Gengar fan. You guys might not know that, but there's a Gengar that I'm not gonna talk about because I don't want to pump it right now. But there's a Gengar that I am obsessed with that I really want to get my hands on, and it's like one of my like ultimate collection goals as far as Gengar goes. But I'm putting it off because there's so much other stuff I'm trying to do with my collection. But I think it's pretty like, what I'm saying is I think it's pretty easy to like guess what cards are going to do well. Oh my god, I completely blanked on this one. The Magikarp from Paldea Evolved. Dude, I cannot believe I forgot that one. Okay guys, I should have also talked about that, okay? That card is beautiful. I pulled one myself. It's awesome. But guys, the price is getting ridiculous. Again, let this stuff settle down a little bit. I think people are definitely just pumping certain cards they think are like worthy of being really, really valuable. And again, I think it's kind of easy to see this coming for some of these cards. You guys might say, how would it be easy to see that a Magikarp card would do really well? Well, I mean, if you look at the Shining Magikarp and how well that card has done, if you look at the Alt Art Magikarp from Sun and Moon and how well that card has done, extremely well, I don't really care for these cards. Why? Because I remember playing the game and Magikarp just flopping around. Yes, it turns into Gyarados, but Gyarados is way more badass, so why would I ever buy Magikarp if I can buy Gyarados? I will say, the Paldea Evolved Magikarp artwork is cool because it does feature a Gyarados in the very back of the card, which is dope, and the artwork is incredible. Okay, when we're going straight for art, sure, that card smacks, but same thing. Okay, a lot of people are talking about a certain card. Do not buy that card. Okay, when a lot of people are talking about a certain thing and how popular it is, it's kind of dangerous. Okay, just like with the stock market, when your favorite stocks are down in the dumps and there's blood in the streets, that's when the sharks are swimming. That's when people are buying. The smart people, that's when they're buying. They're buying when you're fearful, okay? When everybody is hyped up about something, the people with money are not buying. And the ones that are buying are just have a lot of new money and they're foolish, because you're not going to buy something that's already extremely bullish where a lot of that growth has already happened, okay? Unless you're me. I occasionally do buy stuff that is, out of straight FOMO and hype. Some of my vintage cards I paid way too much money for, just because I think that they're not going to be existent in the future. But that's a totally different scenario, right? The vintage stuff, there's far less of it. We're talking about like 100 to 200 cards in the entire world in the grade that I own some of them in. So yeah, that stuff might be worth just jumping the gun on. But something that there's tens of thousands of it, and then even more numbers in a PSA 9 for a lot of these cards. It's like, bro, these cards are still being open. People own cases of Paldea Evolved, myself included. This stuff is sitting out there, okay? Magikarp is going to get pulled again and again and again. Those pop numbers are going to increase severely from here, in my opinion. A lot of these pop numbers are going to increase severely from here. Now, temporal with the Gastly, again, print numbers, I don't know. Maybe that won't exponentially grow as more graded, as cards get graded. But I'm just saying, like, there's not a lot of rush for Modern. These prices are kind of outrageous. And I just want to urge caution to everybody. Talk some sense. I think everybody knows it's kind of like nonsensical and irrational to buy these cards at these prices. But there are definitely people out there that are like, well, wait a minute. I think that this card still has a lot of room to run. It's just pumping, guys. It's pumping. There are so many Pokemon cards out there. There's no way all the hype can be set on just a couple cards. And the only cards that, like, I personally feel are maybe worth buying into the hype a little bit would be the Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. Maybe the Umbreon V at this point. Like, maybe. Because it honestly is a better artwork. And that, like, I'm not gonna dog on PokeRev for making that claim. Like, that's a solid claim about that card, and a lot of us probably should have just been buying it for the artwork and expecting that it will explode in value for the artwork. So like cards like that, maybe. Umbreon has always been super popular, but even the vintage OG most sought after Umbreon cards have not moved the way these newer Umbreon cards are moving. They're moving too fast. It is not sustainable. Certain cards, Blaziken, alt art, absolutely incredible. Charizard V alt art, absolutely incredible. The Lugia V, which I think people don't think is crazy, but I really, really like the Lugia V alt art. Like, there are definitely some alt arts in these modern eras that are highlighted that I think are inevitably going to do well because they're just such badass looking Pokemon. The Blaziken from Chilling Reign is just off the chains. I love the Blaziken from Chilling Reign. And then Sun and Moon. There's a huge bubble with Sun and Moon. People are paying crazy astronomical prices for the Sun and Moon alt arts, and like, everyone was like, it's going to the moon. This is it. And I felt it. I felt it in my gut. I'm like, oh God, Sun and Moon is going to do so well. I'm missing out here. I'm still not buying anything Sun and Moon. And I bought a couple cards here and there. When I was at Collecticon, I made it a thing to get the Latios GX. And I traded for that and put very little cash towards it. So I'm like super stoked I picked that card up in a PSA 9. No, it's not a PSA 10, but it's still mint condition. It's a little off center. It's dope. Like cards like very few alt arts basically. The Blastoise Piplup, I really want that one, but like very few alt arts in Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield I think are candidates for just continuing to climb because they are super iconic. The demand is there, and even with the high supply, everything is relative. The population of these really, really high supply cards is relative to the population of collectors at the time. And the collector community is constantly growing. There's constantly new people, new eyes come into the hobby, which means that relative to these high pops, it's going to seem low pop in terms of how many people are trying to come in and get this card. Might not make sense. From the beginning of coming into this hobby, people have been saying if it's not low pop, it won't go up in value. It just, like, pops are everything. I agree, pops are everything. But when it comes to ultra modern stuff that everybody wants, that is extremely relevant and super popular and very high demand, pops aren't everything. Anyways, that's my rant. Don't overspend on these cards, guys. Patience pays, and a lot of the stuff you can find near mint, raw, from other people, your friends, people in the community. Go to trade nights, go to conventions. There's going to be a kid walking around with stuff that nobody wants. And even if the market is a little bit higher on that card now, in a couple months, it might not be. Also, we need to keep in mind that raw values are always going to be less than the graded values of 9s and 10s. So I think, you know, people buying this card raw and expecting to flip it for a massive gain, that is not going to happen. The only way that's going to happen is if you get it graded, and then you're taking a risk, you're putting money into grading. There are so many variables that go into play here. It is not as easy to play the, you know, Poke market as people think it is. And you guys just got to be cautious, and let me know what you think about like the Gastly and the Magikarp and the Alt Art Umbreon V and the Iron Crown and just Temporal Forces just being a super ultra new set, and already, you know, these cards are at these prices. It's not natural, it's not organic, and it really doesn't excite me. I feel like I could pick up all these cards for dirt cheap in 6 months, but that's just me. Every time I go into my local game shop, which I will admit has been months now since I've gone in there, but every time I go in there, they have everything that's come out with the modern sets. They have it all. They've got multiple copies of like all these cards. There's nothing special about them, and I can almost guarantee, even with TCG Player having that Gastly at, you know, $50, whatever it's at now, I would still be able to, with my relationship with the shop, probably pick that card up for $20. So, I mean, guys, just because, you know, TCG Player, which I think is manipulated and controlled by other entities as well, I would just let people know what you're willing to pay on these cards and leave it up to them. Because at some point, people are going to want to sell an illustration card for $20, $30 if they can get that. Guys, some of these cards right out of the gate, even without manipulation, like right out the gate, some of these cards are like already too expensive. Like it's kind of wild. Like it's an amazing time to be in the hobby. There's so much value in a lot of the stuff we open. I think my only bad experience, honestly, in all of Scarlet and Violet was Paldean Fates, and that's on me. I bought a case of ETBs. I probably should have, I don't know what I could have done differently with Paldean Fates, but it was very unamusing for me, and I feel like I didn't get a whole lot of value back out of it. But for the most part, like all these sets have a lot of cards that give a lot of value back out, especially 151. Anyways, and I am surprised that the 151 market hasn't been manipulated. I'm not saying that like it should be pumped, but I am saying that like the Blastoise, Venusaur, and Charizard are pretty iconic from 151. I think we're at a floor right now at these prices. I think that those cards are going to get more and more expensive, and I don't always have the money to make the plays that I want to make. Like Battle Styles, I still want to buy cases of Battle Styles, and I haven't done it yet because I'm still thinking about Sword and Shield sets that are more popular, like Brilliant Stars and Lost Origin, but it's like 140 and change versus 100, 110. Like, it's just, they're both Sword and Shield. They both have pretty good alt arts that are pretty good value, pretty close to value. The Sleepy Tyranitar. And then there's other alt arts and battle styles too. Anyways, I'm ranting about other stuff now, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the market in the long term, and it's really exciting. There's a lot of cards with a lot of great value, but don't buy these cards just because everybody else seems like they're buying them. That's always a terrible reason to buy stuff. Only buy it if you truly want it, and if you're truly a fan of the artworks. And that goes without saying. Be patient. Wait for the right time to buy this stuff. Anyways, peace out, guys.